So, today we're diving into this really fascinating and honestly pretty chilling fictional manuscript. It's called The Interrogation of Comrade Schmidt, and it's all about the slow, quiet, almost bureaucratic way a writer's integrity gets dismantled by a totalitarian state.
Right from the get-go, the manuscript hits you with this warning, and you really got to pay attention to it. This isn't some simple story of good guys versus bad guys. No, it's about all that messy gray area in between. It's about regular people, trying to make impossible choices when the pressure is on. It just perfectly sets the stage for a very human and, a very uncomfortable look at what it means to compromise.
All right, so let's meet our main character, Comrade Schmidt. He's a writer, gets his funding from the state, and one day a letter shows up. It's a summons. He needs to go to the Ministry of Cultural Affairs to talk about his recent work. The letter keeps saying it's all just routine, but Schmidt knows better. In his world, when someone tells you something is routine, it's never routine.
And right away, we hit the central problem. How can Schmidt talk about his recent work when, there isn't any? See, this is more than just writer's block. It's a full-blown crisis of faith. In a system that basically demands you're always performing, always showing how much you believe, Schmidt has just run out of gas. He's got nothing left in the tank.
This slide really just lays it all out, doesn't it? And shows you just how deep his disillusionment goes. He used to be certain of these huge, sweeping ideas, the grand march of history, the justice of the cause. But now, his world has shrunk down to these tiny, paranoid little facts. The price of bread on a Tuesday, the fear that his neighbor is a spy. The grand story has completely fallen apart, replaced by the grim reality of just trying to get by.
So, Schmidt has this one last refuge, right? A secret notebook. It's the only place he can be himself. And it's not like he's writing some grand plan to overthrow the government. It's filled with what the book calls tired thoughts, little observations, like how a word just becomes empty noise when you hear it over and over. He knows this notebook is a liability, basically a paper trail leading straight back to his real self. So he makes a smart choice. He leaves it at home. So Schmidt gets to the ministry, and his silence, his lack of work, is treated like a disease that needs a cure. And what's the cure? Oh, a helpful seminar, of course. It's all framed as this positive thing, a place for artists to support each other, to break through creative blocks. But, as you can probably guess, attendance is absolutely mandatory. But here's the thing, this isn't therapy, not even close. It's a tool of control. The seminar is a carefully designed machine for getting inside the heads of people who are starting to have doubts, to figure out exactly where they're wavering, and then to, gently, guide them back onto the correct path. It's surveillance that's been dressed up to look like support.
Now, to really get how this guidance works, you need to understand the rules of the game. Rule number 1 is something called socialist realism. And this means you don't write about life as it actually is, with all its problems and doubts. No, you have to show life as it's supposed to be, as it's moving toward this amazing, glorious future. It's basically forced optimism.
And rule number 2 is partisanship. This idea just throws the concept of an objective, neutral artist right out the window. According to this, a writer has a duty to be a soldier in an ideological war. Every word you write, every character you create, has to serve the goals of the party. Suddenly, every single artistic choice is a political one.
And this quote, this is where it gets really twisted. In an essay they give Schmidt, this is the logic they use. They say that burying your own feelings, your doubts, your despair, that's not lying. Oh no, that's discipline. It's your revolutionary duty to pick the correct truth, the useful truth, over the one you actually feel deep down in your gut. Okay, so this brings us to a major turning point. The pressure's on. To prove he's getting with the program, Schmidt has to actually create something for this seminar. So he writes a poem. It's honest, maybe not his best work, but it's an honest poem about some construction workers. And it gets shot down. Immediately. The facilitator, a guy named Lange, hits him with this brutal critique. Because Schmidt just showed tired workers, because he didn't wrap it all up in ideological joy, the poem gets labeled pessimistic. See, in this system, if you're not actively optimistic, you're seen as an enemy. There's no middle ground.
So, they send Schmidt back to fix it. And he does, methodically. It's like he has a propaganda checklist. He injects joy into the tired workers. He adds a scene where an older worker passes down revolutionary wisdom. He hammers home a clear, optimistic message. He literally transforms his real observation into a piece of state-approved art.
And here you have it. The final product. This stanza from his corrected poem gets tons of praise. They call it a sign of his ideological development. He's learned to speak their language. He's performed belief perfectly. And this is his first huge conscious step in betraying himself.
You'd think he'd be relieved, right? He's survived. But no. This success doesn't bring him any peace. In fact, it's what sends him into a total nosedive. Now that the state knows he can be corrected, they see him as a valuable asset, and they start pulling him in deeper.
And just watch how fast the dominoes fall. First, he hears a colleague is planning to defect, and he keeps his mouth shut to protect himself. Then, he burns that secret notebook, literally incinerating the last piece of his private, honest self. He takes the promotions, the fellowships. Then, he becomes a facilitator in the very same seminar that broke him. And the final step? He signs a form, officially agreeing to become an informer. It's a total, complete capitulation. This right here is the true horror of Schmidt's story. The system isn't just satisfied with silencing people who disagree. Its real genius is in taking the doubters, the ones it has broken, and turning them into its most effective recruiters. Schmidt is now using the exact same logic, the same chillingly kind tone, on a new batch of writers that was used on him.
And from the state's point of view, mission accomplished. Check out his official file. His entire psychological and moral collapse is boiled down to this cold, bureaucratic summary. A problem was found, ideologically unreliable. An intervention was made, the seminar, and the outcome, successfully reintegrated, reliable, useful. Just like that, file closed. And if you need it spelled out any clearer, just listen to this quote from Muller, the bureaucrat who called Schmidt in at the very beginning. He says it all. It's not about getting rid of the doubtful. It's about converting them, making them into tools. It's more efficient, and it's more total. Chilling, isn't it?
So, how does this whole story end? Well, not with a big dramatic finish. Schmidt isn't executed or sent to a labor camp. That would almost be too easy. Instead, the manuscript is something much more clever. It turns the whole thing back around on the reader. His final state isn't a tragedy. It's just this quiet, ongoing compromise. He just goes on. He leads the seminars, he writes his correct poems, he lives his life in that awful, empty space between what he knows is true and what he is forced to say. It's the quiet, soul-crushing reality of his new life. And this is the very last line of the manuscript, a question. But notice, it doesn't ask what you would do in Schmidt's shoes. It asks something much more direct, much more personal. What are you doing now? It forces us to look at our own lives, our own small compromises, the ways we perform for our jobs or for social acceptance, and it leaves us with this really unsettling question about where we draw the line.